They were planted to provide the nation with a strategic reserve of timber. But these days, the woods owned by the Forestry Commission do much more. Some are nature reserves, some have mountain bike trails, and others host events like concerts or even husky racing.
But what about the future? The government has announced plans to sell off the land. Our environment reporter Richard Daniel reports.
They're a national asset planted following the severe timber shortages of the First World War. Today, publicly owned forests like Rockingham Forest in Northamptonshire shape our landscape, but now some could be sold off. The Forestry Commission is a significant landowner in our region. It manages 26,000 hectares on our behalf, the equivalent of 26,000 football pitches. For years, this sawmill on the edge of Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk has worked closely with the Forestry Commission. Recently, it's struggled to get enough locally grown softwood. But would that change if the forest was privately owned? That's far from clear.
Over the next few years, I see it increasingly getting harder and harder to source. We're probably going to have to go further afield. The shortage of redwood as well is going to have an impact on price and also the biomass market.
The government hasn't said how much land it plans to sell off, but it does say that if forests like this end up in the private sector, public rights of way, for instance, will be protected. And legislation to protect wildlife will remain in force. But conservationists such as Nick Collinson have concerns. He's in charge of the Suffolk Coasts and Heaths area of outstanding natural beauty. It includes 3 Forestry Commission forests.
We've had a really great relationship with the Forestry Commission. We want that to continue. We want whoever takes over this forest, if it were to be sold, for that individual or individuals to be very externally focused in terms of working with wider organisations and communities, but also to think about this forest as a resource that sits in a landscape rather than just being simply a bespoke resource for timber production.
The government is due to launch its public consultation in the next few weeks. It won't be until next year that we learn how much of the Forestry Commission estate is to be sold. Richard Daniel, BBC Look East.
The Kabeedies have played at Glastonbury and on tours throughout the UK and Europe. But if you haven't heard of their name, you might have heard their music.
They come from Norwich and their music has been chosen as the soundtrack to a new ad for the Microsoft Xbox across the world.
Well, I'm pleased to say we've got Rory Hill from the Kabeedies and their manager Craig Hill with us now. Craig, first of all, tell us how this all came about.
Well, early hours of the morning I got an email from California just saying, we like your song, we'd like to use it, put it forward for the Xbox campaign for a new game to go with the Kinect peripheral, and, you know, we'd like it. How do we go about, you know, getting your agreement to it?
And this is a B-side from some time ago. How did you heard that? I mean, you don't even play it anymore, do you?
No, we haven't played it in a long time. It was a B-side to the first single we ever did, and no idea how they found it, but it's exciting. I mean, I'm glad they did find it. So.
Fantastic exposure for the band,
yeah,
globally.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it gives you an opportunity to get your song heard by your band and your name out there in a way you never could have imagined you'd be able to.
Presumably you're playing it now again.
Not yet, not yet, but the thought has come about.
Well, also you've got a new single out at the moment. I think we can see a little bit of that while we're talking to you. So tell us what the band's up to at the moment, despite in spite of all of this excitement.
Well, like the single, like you said, the single's just came out, so we've been touring that in Europe and the UK. We've just finished that tour. That was great, and at the moment we're writing and recording more and more. It's just non-stop, really. It's always busy.
So are you going to tell us how much they got for this or not?
No. Just enough to keep them going for a little while longer.
But not enough to buy the big cars and...
No, one day.
It's exactly a year, isn't it, since your debut album came out, so a very exciting year you've had, I suppose. Yeah,
I mean, it's been great. I mean, we've kind of been non-stop touring, so we've just been enjoying the normal things that a band does every day, and then to have something like this come along just really boosts that, so...
And how, once you've got this, how do you build on that now? Because that's the most important thing. You've got this kind of leg up, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess...
Work hard.
Yeah, work harder than we already are, as much as we can, really, and just write more and more songs. That's all we can do.
Well, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, really great news, and thank you both so much for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
And let's hope it goes download #1 or something. Yeah, be great,
It's not
wouldn't
out here yet, is it? So we've got to, it's in America at the moment, and
Yeah,
then
but it's on the internet, so you can see it.
watch out for the ad when it comes here.
It's everywhere if it's on the internet. Well done. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Well, let's go back to the subject of living longer. We asked for your calls and emails, and Kim Riley is in our newsroom now.
Yeah, I took a call from Neville Lewis from Bury St Edmunds. He's 71. He gets a lot of support from his family. He thought that Margaret and her brood were a wonderful family, very inspirational. He says it's a sad comment on today's life, though, that a third of people actually live on their own. Marion Smith from King's Lynn says she's looked after her mother for 23 years. It wasn't a chore, it was a lovely thing to do, she says. It broke her heart when she had to eventually put her in a home. It's your duty to look after your parents. Kate in Lowestoft, she'd like to point out that in her experience, the majority of caring duties still seem to fall on the women of the family. She thinks men are less inclined to look after their parents and pass the duties onto female siblings. Sylvia Walton from Elmswell in Suffolk is 82. 82 and a half, in fact. She likes to think of herself as young in spirit. Care in the home is fine, she says, if you have a family nearby, but so many people don't. Sarah Scott from Long Stratton in Norfolk, she's been looking after her 94-year-old dad for 16 years. She's had to give up her job in order to do so. She says she gets no help whatsoever from the government, and if she wants help, it's £15 an hour, impossible when she's given up her job. Eileen and Don Swain from Bishop's Stortford, mother's 98. They bought a larger house so they could accommodate her. They're all getting on well, even they look after their granddaughter. Sometimes difficult, they say, but not often. Don't think mother would still be around, if not in the comfort of their home and with her family. As to the reablement story, Patrick in Whittam says he used to be a paramedic working in a falls unit. In his experience, a reablement works fantastically well. It stops people from switching off. But I had an email from Susan Poole. She says her mother-in-law has been in hospital for 2 weeks, discharged, would like to have gone into a residential home to pick herself up. Instead, she was forced to go back home. It's not suiting her. She's demoralised and unhappy. Well, those are just a few of the comments you've left us, and we're going to be going back to your comments later in the week. You can always call us 08457 630 630 or email look.east@bbc.co.uk.
Kim, thank you very much.
Nice to get both up there eventually, wasn't it? The phone number and the email address. The weather.
The weather. Well, last night we had some weather pictures from Felix Gertzo. Tonight we've got weather pictures from Cromer. These shots were sent in by Barry Price and show the waves unleashing their power on Cromer Pier. Gusts in that area up to 45 miles an hour were recorded earlier this morning. And it's all because of this area of low pressure